My name is Alex. At the time of the events, I was still young, not older than 24 years old, and full of enthusiasm. I remember when I got promoted, I was madly in love with my girlfriend Lily. We never got bored together. We had common interests, musical tastes, and similar worldviews, so we always had something to talk about. Moreover, she grew up in a family of police officers, so she perfectly understood my desire to pursue this career and patiently tolerated urgent matters that arose at work and sometimes led to the cancellation of our dates. Not every girl would calmly handle situations where I had to rush to work in the middle of a meeting. I think it was her patience and understanding in this regard that attracted me. We were in a relationship for about 3 years when we decided to move in together and get married. At that time, she was still studying in her third year of medical school. After a modest wedding with close relatives and friends, we rented a 30-meter apartment with excellent renovation and a balcony, but practically without furniture. The apartment only had a toilet, bath, and kitchen sink. At first, we even slept for a couple of months on an inflatable mattress, but we took this minimalism lightly. Overall, it was a fixable situation, and besides, my salary was quite good for our region, especially since overtime and weekend and holiday shifts were paid extra. We lived in that apartment with my wife for over a year. During this time, I bought a lot of furniture and household appliances for the apartment, and we got internet installed. I was already considering taking out a mortgage to buy this apartment. The apartment was always clean and orderly. Anyone who studied at police or military academies would understand how ingrained this maintenance of order becomes. But most of the expenses, of course, were covered by me, from renting our apartment to buying all the furniture and groceries. Lily contributed some pocket change to the shared budget, but I understood her situation and didn't ask for more. She was studying at medical university, so almost all her finances went into education. She worked in various places just to make ends meet. In general, despite the difficulties, we lived in complete harmony until a certain point. Everything changed on a not-so-beautiful day at the end of summer when my phone rang at 4 in the morning. There was a general alert in the region. One of the prisoners had escaped from our city's colony and disappeared into the forest. In short, it meant putting on the uniform and being at the designated assembly point in an hour. From there, we would be picked up. The chief would give instructions and necessary information, and we would be sent with a group to search for the criminal in the forest with trained dogs. How many hours or days these searches would take? Damn if I knew. But I always mentally prepared myself not to be home for the next day. My wife was aware of all the intricacies of my job, coming from a family of police officers herself. She understood the system of our work, and she was always prepared for my sudden shifts. While I got dressed, Lily quickly packed a backpack with food, water, and cigarettes, kissed me goodbye, and saw me off to the front door. As practice showed, in most cases, these searches in the nearby forest turned out to be fruitless. But we diligently followed the order and searched the area. But this time, luck smiled at us. Another group caught the runaway after about a day. All clear. Everyone's free. Get some rest. Back to duty was the next announcement. The next day, tired but satisfied with the work done, my colleagues and I returned to the city at around 7 in the morning. I entered the house quietly, opening the door not to disturb anyone. I immediately noticed something amiss along the corridor. There was a pile of shoes, and many jackets were hanging on the hooks. As you can understand, none of it belonged to me or my wife. It didn't bode well. I collected myself, whispered to myself about keeping a cool head and steady breathing. It was my mantra to take control of nerves. Without taking off my shoes, I began inspecting the apartment. It is difficult for me to find words to describe the nightmare I witnessed. The extent of this horror could only be conveyed with the help of profanity, but even that would be insufficient. The apartment looked like a hurricane had swept through, or an earthquake, or a summoning of spirits from the other side, only without pentagrams and blood. It wasn't just a student party. It looked like the last party of their lives, as if the end of the world was imminent. The bathroom was covered in someone's vomit. Even the walls were stained. The tap in the bathroom was torn off, water flowing smoothly into the sink drain. Some guy in wet clothes was sleeping right in the bathtub. The kitchen was a mess with broken dishes and dozens of empty alcohol bottles. Another intoxicated body lay unconscious against the wall. One of the wall shelves where a bunch of spices was stored was torn off and lying shattered on the floor, the spices scattered around. Another room didn't look any better. The transformable chair in the living room was unfolded, and a couple managed to fit in it, sleeping in each other's arms. The plasma TV, which I bought on installments 6 months ago and only paid off last month, lay on the floor, broken. The full picture of this chaos was completed by the bed on which my wife lay naked and in the embrace of some guy. A couple of used condoms lay on the floor near the bed. Apparently, something inside me snapped at the sight because the first thing I wanted to do was not to endure all this to the end but to go out to the balcony for a smoke. I should have stayed inside. There was a bucket, a mop, and my favorite ashtray usually kept there. That same bucket was also smeared instead of the ashtray. There was a regular plate with a bunch of cigarette butts that didn't fit in it and were scattered all over the floor. My collection of succulents of 11 species was gone, out of curiosity. I looked down and saw it below, more precisely, what was left of it, broken pots and dead plants. Probably it was fun to throw pots from the 5th floor. That's when I went berserk. The coldness I tried to maintain in my head completely disappeared, giving way to hot rage. I didn't even know what angered me more in this situation. The fact of my wife's betrayal, or the sight of the destroyed apartment that I had carefully arranged for a whole year at my own expense. I had worked like crazy all this time to ensure that our family lacked nothing. I fed, clothed, and even did the repairs myself. I hadn't even bought new underwear for myself in a year. Everything went to my wife and the house. And what did it turn into? Lily didn't just have a party. It was a cursed orgy with wild drunkenness and destruction. I finished my cigarette, carefully extinguished it in the plate. And the first thing, I recorded everything on my phone, capturing the faces of each of these guys on camera. With the compromising material collected, I began educational work. No, not giving a lecture. My talk was short and consisted mainly of blows from my fists due to a severe hangover. The company didn't immediately realize what was happening. The guys took the brunt of it. I tried not to use force on the girls, just intimidated them by smashing empty bottles nearby. I just let loose, ferociously, wildly, with pleasure when I cornered them all. I told them they had until evening to clean up and return everything to its original state, or I would file a report against all of them, and being a police officer myself would make sure their lives weren't sweet after this. Lily continued to sit on the bed shamefully, covering herself with a blanket. Her eyes were wide open, red from tears. "Hun, I'll explain everything," she stammered. From this worn-out phrase, I only got angrier. Through gritted teeth, I hissed, "Gather your things and make sure your spirit is not here by evening." I left the apartment on that note, giving the students a chance to clean up the mess they had created. I called my work partner, briefly explained the situation, and spent the evening at his place. I desperately wanted to drink something strong and forget all of it like a bad dream. When I returned home later that evening, no one was there. They had managed to tidy up as much as possible. They even installed a new faucet in the bathroom. Within the next week, they chipped in for a new TV and attached a new wall shelf for spices, apologizing and begging me not to file a police report as it could cause problems for them at the university. I felt sorry for these guys, and I used the video as compromising material only for revenge against my wife and the guy she cheated on me with, taking advantage of my status as a police officer. I approached the university administration and provided them with a video recording of the wreckage in my apartment, first blurring the faces of the other students in Photoshop, naturally. It's not hard to guess that these two were expelled without the possibility of returning after that incident. I immediately filed for divorce. Lily wrote to me probably every day throughout the entire divorce process, sending 100 messages with apologies for her wrongdoing or accusations that I ruined her life because of the video. From my perspective, it resembled emotional swings, and it became a kind of mystery about what Lily would write to me next. I only gloated in response, feeling a special satisfaction from the fulfilled revenge. Did I act unfairly? Perhaps. An eye for an eye, as they say. I felt no guilt and impatiently awaited the day when I would finally be free. I was even glad that our apartment was rented, and on paper, I was the only one responsible for it, allowing me to continue living there peacefully without dividing assets. Lily gained nothing materially from our divorce. All she had left was to return to her parents in a small town and try to rebuild her life. Many years after this situation, I'm even glad that it ended this way. I could have continued living with a two-faced girl, unaware of the deception, and that would have been much worse than the horror I saw in my apartment on that fateful day. I have become wiser and more cautious in my relationships with other women, allowing me to protect myself from making mistakes again. That's the story. Share your thoughts in the comments about this situation and the behavior of the spouses.